Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we sift through just a mountain of research, everything from, space probes and AI to ancient institutions, and really try to boil it all down for you.
Yeah, it's quite the landscape today. Our goal really is to pull out the key insights on how different systems, both national and global, are coping with this constant, rapid change. We're looking at policy, economics, and crucially, the human side of things.
That's right. And you should get ready for some maybe surprising links. We're connecting things like structural issues in India's workforce and governance, the global scramble for tech and trade advantages, and, well, the really urgent environmental challenges we all face.
Surprising but important connections.
Exactly. So let's just jump right in. Let's unpack this.
Go ahead.
We can start maybe with governance and this idea of meritocracy, because the Union Public Service Commission, the UPSC, it's hitting its centenary mark, right? Set up in 1926.
1926, following the Lee Commission. And, the core idea behind the UPSC, then and now, was to be this guardian of meritocracy.
Guardian, how so?
Well, selecting the best talent, sure, but also, crucially, shielding the civil service from political meddling or, personal favors. The aim was always an efficient, impartial government machine.
And the scale today is just, wow.
It's arguably the world's biggest competitive exam.
Wow, it's massive. You're talking, up to 1.2 million people, 12 lakh, applying for just a tiny number of top jobs.
And the options they have. 48 different subjects to choose from, answers in English or 22 other official languages. It's designed to be this ultimate level playing field.
It is. But that highly centralized, high-stakes merit system, well, it stands in really stark, kind of painful contrast to what's happening on the ground with essential care work.
Ah, yes. The sources on the Ansahakal and Straight Parachars, the ASPs in Maharashtra.
Exactly. These women are doing some of the toughest, most foundational work in the rural health system. Really difficult conditions.
And the pay. It highlights a huge structural contradiction.
Yeah.
Their monthly wage has been stuck at 3,000 euros. That's about, 36 US a month?
I know.
Since 2016, right? Since 2016. They've been promised an increase up to 6,000 maybe by the end of next year. But even that, it's still basically poverty wages for work that is absolutely essential, often grueling work too.
And it's not just them, is it? The ASHAs, the accredited social health activists.
Yeah.
Similar situation.
Very similar. They're the first point of contact for health in many communities, yet they're often just classified as volunteers.
Volunteer.
Yeah, compensated only through these incentive payments that are often delayed. The whole system seems to rely on the assumption that poor rural women will just do this vital work without basic job security or even travel money, let alone a living wage.
It's a really jarring contrast. World's toughest exam at the top, relying on essentially volunteer labor at the bottom for healthcare.
It is jarring. And this undervaluation, it pops up again when you look at the broader economic picture for women. We saw this rise in the female labor force participation rate, the FLFPR.
Right. It climbed quite a bit to 41.7% in 2023-24, which sounds good on the surface.
It does sound good. But you really have to look under the hood. The celebration needs some serious caveats.
Okay, so what's the catch? Where does the headline number mislead?
Well, the main drivers of that increase are rural women, classified either as helpers in household enterprises, think unpaid family work, or as self-employed.
So not necessarily secure, well-paid jobs, more like informal or unpaid work being counted.
Precisely. And here's the kicker. The data shows that during this same period that FLFDR went up, real earnings actually went down for most types of workers. Casual workers were the only exception.
Wow. So more women counted in the workforce, but earning less in real terms?
Exactly. It suggests that finding secure, decent-paying work is still a massive hurdle, a systemic barrier, really.
So this top-down, centralized approach, it doesn't seem to be fixing these deep local economic problems, especially when, something like 85% of people in India stay in the district they were born in.
That's the figure. And if centralized policy actually ends up reducing people's ability to act politically or economically at the local level, then maybe we need a different approach.
Like what?
Well, some sources argue really strongly for reclaiming the district, thinking of it as a kind of democratic commons.
A democratic commons, meaning?
Meaning focusing efforts on creating opportunities, fostering political engagement, right, where people actually live. It's about engaging that huge youth population locally, maybe stopping some of that brain drain from rural areas.
That idea of building capacity locally, of national capability, that actually links perfectly to our next big theme, sovereign AI.
Ah, yes, the global race for AI. It's become a national security issue, an economic necessity for India to develop its own AI, self-reliant AI.
And it's not just security, right? There's a cultural dimension too.
Absolutely crucial. If you only use AI models trained, say, in the US or Europe, you risk importing biases. Those models might not get India's languages, all 22 official ones, plus dialects or its cultural nuances.
So building AI that actually reflects and serves Indian society, protects linguistic diversity even.
That's the goal. But the big hurdle is infrastructure, the computing power gap. It's just immense.
How immense?
Well, you've got global players like OpenAI, hardware giants like NVIDIA. They're aiming for infrastructure that uses maybe 10 gigawatts of GPU capacity, India's current total capacity, around 30,000 GPUs, maybe.
That's a huge difference. A massive bottleneck for security and the economy. Needs huge investment.
Monumental strategic investment. And this leads straight to some pretty strong policy recommendations in the sources.
Such as?
Well, to manage security risks and really enforce that sovereignty idea, one suggestion is mandating that any AI model or API serving Indian users must run on infrastructure located entirely inside India.
Okay, keep the data and the processing local.
Exactly, and maybe even stricter for the government itself, suggesting you should only use sovereign AI models or maybe open source ones for its own operations. Avoid those black box proprietary systems you can't fully audit.
Interesting. There's also this initiative, Pratibha Setu, connecting UPSC candidates who don't quite make the final cut with other job opportunities. Seems like a smart way to leverage that talent pool.
It does, yes. Trying to make sure that intense effort isn't entirely wasted if you just missed the final list.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Macroeconomics, the RBI and the US Fed. They seem to move in lockstep sometimes with interest rates.
Yeah, there's a definite synchronicity, a high concordance index, as they call it. But it's not quite symmetrical.
How so?
The data suggests the RDI tends to follow the Fed more closely when the Fed hikes rates, gets hawkish, than when it cuts rates or gets dovish.
Okay, why the asymmetry? What's the driving force there?
It really comes down to capital flows. If the US Fed hikes rates and the RBI doesn't follow, the interest rate difference between India and the US shrinks.
And money flows out, chasing higher returns elsewhere.
Precisely. Global capital is mobile. It seeks yield. So you get capital outflows, which puts downward pressure on the rupee. The RBI often acts to prevent that kind of instability, even if it means hiking rates when the domestic economy might prefer a cut.
So they're caught in a bind, basically, defend the currency or boost domestic growth?
That's the classic dilemma. So if general rate cuts are difficult because of this external pressure, what else can you do to help the economy?
Right, what's the alternative?
The argument shifts towards more targeted sectoral policies, instead of broad rate cuts that might not even reach the end borrower effectively.
You do something more specific.
Yeah, like targeted long-term refinancing operations, TLTROs directed at certain sectors, or maybe providing foreign exchange-denominated refinancing specifically for key export sectors like textiles or electronics.
Ah, so direct support to the areas that create jobs and exports, ensuring the help actually gets where it's needed.
That's the idea, making sure policy transmission actually happens.
Speaking of exports, the global trade environment seems to be getting tougher. We saw the US slap that extra 50% tariff on some Indian goods.
Yeah, that's a significant move. And it does bring back uncomfortable echoes of things like the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act in the US back in 1930.
Which made the Great Depression worse by killing trade. Not a great historical parallel.
Not at all. It's a warning sign about protectionism. So India's strategic response is really important here. Diversification is key.
Like the new free trade agreement with EFTA, the European Free Trade Association.
Exactly. That one's interesting because it comes with a big investment promise, $50 billion over the first 10 years. It suggests a strategy of maybe accepting certain trade-offs and tariffs to secure large foreign investment.
And then there's the climate angle in trade. The EU's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, CBAM, is coming. How does India prepare for that?
With its own system. India is getting ready to launch its carbon credit trading scheme, the CCTS, maybe by the end of October.
So creating a domestic carbon market?
Yes, and it's partly a defensive move against things like CBAM. By creating its own recognized carbon pricing and trading system, India can potentially shield its exporters from these foreign carbon tariffs.
Making sure Indian products stay competitive even as global markets demand more green credentials, turning climate policy into trade strategy.
That seems to be the play. It's about preempting those barriers.
Okay, let's pivot now to the environment directly. We have a conservation success story first, the dugongs in Palk Bay.
Yes. The Dugong Conservation Reserve, set up in 2022, it protects over 12,000 hectares of vital seagrass habitat.
And the key to its success, according to the sources, was involving the local fishing community.
Absolutely crucial. They brought the fishers in as partners, not enemies. Focus on working with them to reduce accidental catches, the bycatch problem.
That collaborative model seems essential, turning locals into protectors.
It's being praised internationally for that reason. But the threats haven't gone away.
Still issues with mechanized fishing, port construction, pollution.
All of those, yes. Dredging too. And there's another big challenge. Dugongs don't respect borders. They swim across the Palk Strait between India and Sri Lanka.
So you need cross-border cooperation.
Urgently. Without India and Sri Lanka working together, any conservation success on one side remains fragile. The protection needs to be unified.
Okay, from local marine conservation to much bigger planetary interventions, geoengineering. There's a new study looking at polar geoengineering ideas.
Yes, a pretty stark assessment. It looked at 5 major concepts for, fixing the climate at the poles, and basically found that none of them meet the criteria for being responsible or even workable, and they carry huge risks.
Like stratospheric aerosol injection, SAI, that's the one you hear about most often, spraying stuff into the atmosphere to block sunlight. Why doesn't that work for the poles?
Well, 2 big reasons. One, it relies on reflecting sunlight, so it's useless during the long, dark polar winter. No sun, nothing to reflect.
Okay, makes sense.
And 2, the really scary part, the termination shock.
Termination shock.
Yeah. If you ever had to stop the spraying, suddenly maybe due to war or funding cuts or technical failure, the built-up warming effect would hit incredibly fast. Global temperatures could shoot up within just 10 or 20 years. An instant, catastrophic climate crisis.
Yikes. Okay. And the other ideas weren't much better.
Not really. Just look at the scale and cost. Building things like sea curtains or sea walls might cost over $1 billion per kilometer.
$1 billion per kilometer.
Or trying sea ice management by scattering glass microbeads, you'd need about 360 million tons of them every year. That's basically the world's entire annual plastic production, but in tiny glass beads. The logistics, the cost, the unknown ecological side effects, they're just off the charts.
So the message is pretty clear. These tech fixes aren't the answer.
The study reinforces it strongly. The real path is decarbonization, cutting emissions drastically and fundamentally changing how we humans relate to the planet, not these risky, hyper-expensive, maybe impossible techno-fantasies.
Right. Which brings us back down to earth, literally with urban flooding. Kolkata had that massive rainfall event recently.
Yeah, 251 millimeters of rain in one go, the heaviest since 1986. It highlights the immediate reality of climate change impacts in cities.
And the causes are kind of a double whammy, aren't they? More extreme rain events because of climate change, hitting cities that aren't built for it.
Exactly. It's that combination. Climate change making rainfall more variable, more intense, and then rapid, often unplanned urbanization. One source noted almost 40% of Kolkata's new development since 2000 happened on floodplains or wetlands.
Paving over the natural sponges.
Pretty much. And overwhelming drainage systems that were designed for rainfall patterns from decades ago, patterns that just don't apply anymore.
So what are the solutions? What needs to happen?
Well, the priorities are clear, but they need serious money and political commitment. Investing in modern stormwater drainage is key.
Upgrading the pipes.
Yes, but also restoring natural buffers, bringing back wetlands, protecting lakes within the city, and really importantly, climate-proofing critical infrastructure.
Like power lines.
Exactly. Moving electrical cables underground, for instance, so you don't get widespread power outages or, worse, electrocutions every time there's major flooding. It's about building resilience to these secondary impacts too.
We've covered such a huge amount of ground today, from, the details of managing crowds in Karur or revising voter rolls in Bihar in some of the source articles, all the way up to these massive structural issues.
We really have. From the contradictions in how we value labor, both high skill and essential care work, to managing global finance under pressure, securing our digital future with AI.
Defending trade interests, protecting vulnerable species like dugongs, grappling with climate risks from geoengineering down to urban floods.
Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah.
But what ties it all together, perhaps?
I think it's the need for, deeper thinking. For asking tough questions about how these systems work or don't work, and then, crucially, executing policy much better on the ground to handle all this complexity we've talked about.
And that connects, interestingly, back to knowledge itself, especially now in the age of AI. Well, AI systems are getting incredibly good at mastering existing knowledge. They can ingest vast amounts of information, find patterns, provide answers based on everything written down.
They know the answer.
They're getting there, yes. But the really tough problems, the structural contradictions we looked at today, they need more than just answers based on past data. They need insight. They need new questions.
Oh, and AI can't do that. Ask the truly new questions.
Not in the same way humans can. AI doesn't possess fundamental curiosity, that innate drive we have to poke at things, to wonder why, to challenge assumptions. That seems uniquely human.
So while the machines get better at knowing what is, our role is to keep asking what could be or what should be.
Exactly. Let the AI manage the vast library of existing knowledge. Our job, perhaps the essence of our humanity, is that restless curiosity, the need to formulate the next question, the one that might actually change things, the one that challenges the contradictions.
That's a fascinating thought to end on. Embrace the curiosity, ask the hard questions.
That's the challenge we'll leave you with.
And that's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.